G'day guys, welcome to the match review of our 42-point win over the Fremantle Dockers at Marvel Stadium on Easter Sunday. And great to be on the board, 1 and 2 now, just keeping in touch with that top 8. Nothing to get carried away with, as much as there were a lot of positives. We'll talk about them in this review. But from my point of view, I'm not at all convinced at this stage, and how could you be? This is just one small step in the right direction, which is going to be so intriguing now to see how we butter up against the Gold Coast Suns away at their ground. Can we replicate the good things that we did in this game against essentially a similar type team, a young team, this Saturday night? Stiff opposition, exciting young team. So that's good for me. I'm looking forward to it. I really am looking forward to it. But I am not at all. I mean, it is a funny thing trying to be a supporter these days, but I think you learn pretty quickly, particularly if you've been following the Carlton Football Club, is not to get excited or carried away at all. With a 42-point win against a decimated, let's be honest, we got our injuries as well, but a young team on the road, had a big weekend the week before and got a lot wrong, but we did a lot right. So you just try and work out how much of it was our good work compared to how much of it was Fremantle's, I suppose, inability to do what they'd like to do. And did we stop them from doing what they'd like to do? And you'd like to say yes, but at the same time, you've just got to temper that excitement somewhat. I like to listen to Justin Longmuir. I listened to his press conference after the game. I think he hit the nail on the head in regards to them and us. He basically said that they were bullied, particularly at the contest. We got in their grills. We targeted young Andrew Brayshaw, who's a fine young player, and really got stuck into him. He was savage on his group at halftime for not flying the flag. It's actually good to not be on the receiving end of that aggression. And for once, we were the instigators of that. And we did it not, sort of stupid acts, like a Zach Williams in that practice match where he got reported and laid someone out off the ball. We actually did it, within the rules of the game. And I suppose it's funny to say, but in the right spirit of the game. The game has changed. But it was our work around the contest and our aggression at the contest, ability to get numbers at the ball. And the other thing that Longmuir said was that he spoke a lot about the contest work, and Teague talks about this as well, and the clearance work and the numbers at the contest. He spoke more about method. He said our method was a lot better. They got sucked into the contest. They were collapsing on the contest, and he said that when we were able to get our game going on the outside, we looked as good. He said we looked as good on the outside than just about any other team in the competition, which is a huge compliment. 100 more uncontested possessions we had in this game. Just, I suppose, outlining how much we outworked Fremantle. And I think our system looked a little bit better than theirs, particularly going inside forward 50. I think Fremantle definitely played into the hands of our defence. How many times have we played in the hands of an opposition's defence? But it was great to see that flipped, and them bombing the ball into their forward half and having a Liam Jones just mark everything that came his way. 13 tackles inside 50 was a huge result for us. We only had 2 last week. We ticked that off at 20 marks inside 50 as well. Against, let's put it in the context, against the weakened opposition who had 3 of their starting key defenders out. And we looked a lot better than them when we looked further advanced to them. I think I've spoken a lot about benchmarking ourselves against opposition. We failed against Richmond. We failed against Collingwood. But I think we've shown, given we play the way we want to play, we play with the right attitude, that we're further advanced than Fremantle. And for me, that was pleasing. I want to talk a little bit about each line, and what just a few things I noticed. I don't know if it's whether they're obvious or I don't know if you noticed them as well. But from a defensive point of view, I think they benefit our back 6 to 8 defenders who roll back there at certain stages. I think they benefit definitely from a midfield group and that team defence ethos that they work for each other. We had our midfielders, that nice balance, getting that balance right, players who could work up and down the ground and assist our offence, and the ability for us to apply pressure through that midfield, not necessarily by the amount of tackles. I think Fremantle still had more tackles than us, but we had a hell of a lot more of the ball. But it was more about our pressure acts and getting back and to support our back 8, 6 to 7 defenders. So that was great. And I think Fremantle just fell into the trap of bombing the ball inside to Liam Jones or wherever other intercept defender we had in there. And we were able to rebound, for the most part, pretty well. Liam Jones had one out of the box. For me, clearly best on the ground. Check out the My Blue Heaven votes. I popped that up yesterday. Mark Alvey, Phil Poisonides, myself, former Carlton Premiership player Warren McKenzie and Paul Babazza. We all voted yesterday. And I think Liam Jones, I think he was the best player on the ground. I think his first half, they couldn't pass him. I mean, when he's on song like that and he attacks the ball in the air, but it was more than just his marking. His ability to take risks and push up the ground and half contests was just outstanding. I want to talk a little bit about Luke Parks. For me, that was an interesting inclusion. Obviously, Tom Williamson dropped, who'd been terribly out of form, but was it a like for like? I don't think it was. Luke Parks is quite a tall player. I think it gives us a small snapshot into what it may look like. We spoke pre-season about how can you fit a Caleb Marchbank into that back 6 when you have Wiedering, Jones and Plowman. I think this showed that you can do it. It could work. I mean, it's just a small sample size against a weakened Fremantle side, but I like the inclusion. I think with Cottrell, I'll talk about Cotters later, but I think Luke Parks gives you some real energy, and I think that was the disappointing thing about Tom Williamson in the opening 2 games. He wasn't giving us that energy. I'm not quite sure what was going on. It's good to see Tom Williamson go back. I think he was named best player in the VFL. But Luke Parks gives you that energy. But I think we saw it enabled Liam Jones to attack the ball in the air so we could have an intercept defender. And we actually worked for each other. And Luke Parks was exceptional getting back and being that third man up. He got it wrong on a couple of occasions. I think it was one time in the last quarter where we had 4 players up. And I think he was one of them. And Fremantle got a ground ball get and a pretty easy goal. So that needs to be watched. But it allows us to have that traditional intercept defender. Now, that mightn't be Liam Jones every weekend. It could be a Jacob Wiedering. It could be a Luke Parks himself. And what it does for me as well, and this is what I noticed, and this is something that I've been thinking about, about Lockie Plowman, is that it allows Plowman to purely and simply play on a small, or preferably play on a small forward. I don't think he's a good one-on-one defender against anyone who's of similar height and probably stronger. And I talk of the likes of Jordan De Goey, I talk of the likes of, say, a Jack Darling or Isaac Heaney. I don't think that's a good matchup for Lockie Plowman. I think his perfect matchup is to play on a Michael Walters or a Charlie Cameron or even a Graham Myers or a Tom Papley. I think that if he can lock down on that smaller type player, but at the same time get up a little bit further up the ground and become an outlet player himself. He picked up 21 disposals, and I think one thing that Lockie Plowman has done this year is actually uses the ball quite well. He's one of the better kicks down back, particularly on the 45. So I thought that was a positive, bringing in Parks into that role, and it shows that you can, if you get that balance right down back, it shows you that it can work, and it just frees Plowman up a little bit to play on the smaller type, smaller type defender. So what he basically did was Plowman took Williamson's spot, and then Parks took Plowman's spot. And it'd be interesting to see now if Parks can develop and whether he could keep a Caleb Marchbank out. I think it's a real positive from that performance in that back six. I really thought it was a small positive for Doc. Thought it was the best he's looked. He looked freer. There was that mark he took when he went back. He's spoken about the fact that he's, over the last 2 years since he's been back, that one area of his game that he wants to get back to is that going back with the flighted ball and taking intercept marks. He did that once. He's still got this habit of kicking the ball out in the full, but I thought it was his best game for the season. And the other two defenders down there, I thought SBS. I saw some signs from SBS which were good, but once again, he sort of worked his way into the game. He didn't get used a couple of times coming through the middle, which I was savage on. But he looked good. So I thought that was good. 20-odd disposals, used the ball beautifully. Wiedering, I don't think I wouldn't necessarily say he started the season off really well. I thought Taminar probably should have kicked 3, possibly 4. I think Wiedering's just, I'm not saying he's struggling, but he's definitely not at the level he was last year. And I think Sard, it's been, other than the round 1 game against Richmond, it's been a relatively sort of, not a slow start, but he's still trying to find his feet down there. And I think we're trying to give the ball to him too much on the wrong side. He's a left footer. And we're still trying to find a way of working Sard into our system. But from a defensive point of view, I think we benefited from the fact that it was a great team defence throughout the whole game. So a bit of a tick to our defence for the game. Our midfield, I think a big tick to Teague here. I think we rolled a lot of numbers through there. The move of Curnow on Brayshaw was great. I don't know if it was a particularly hard tag, like a really hard tag, but it's what Curnow does best. We don't want, for me, I don't want Ed just running around as a midfielder who's not tagging and just running around picking up his 28, 29 disposals. It's counterproductive as far as I see because he doesn't use it well. But if he can lock down probably on the most damaging opposition midfielder or even one who's particularly good on the outside, then that's a plus for us. Because what we do know with Ed is he can win his own ball as well. So he's just not locked down and not touch the pill. He can still pick up his 20 disposals. But I love the numbers rolled through there. Gibbo opportunity. Fogg was outstanding. Great to see him at centre bounces. 25 disposals, clean with the ball. A real plus to have Gibbo and Fogg, good runners, working up and back, up and down the ground. Thought getting numbers through there was pivotal. And then the work of Walsh, the work rate of Walsh. Cripper was outstanding. His leadership going forward and kicking 2 goals. Williams, look, like Sard, still trying to find his feet. Only in 19 disposals. Could possibly do more, but I think it was a positive sign through that midfield to get so many numbers through there. And Paddy Dow, an interesting one. I don't know. I've read a lot about Paddy and should be dropped and bring setters back this week. I'm not buying into that. I think Dow played on Sarong. I think Sarong did a lot. I know he picked up 20-odd disposals, but I think Dow, look, he fumbled a lot. He's gone from 18 disposals, 13 disposals, and 11 disposals after having a really good pre-season. It's probably not the numbers we want from Paddy at this stage, but I don't know. I just feel that there could be a breakout game for Paddy around the corner. I think he got to a fair number of contests. And I think we just, at least for the next couple of weeks, we probably need to persevere with him. And it's about getting the balance right in that midfield. You can't say, let's drop Paddy Dow and bring in Matthew Kennedy because it's not a like for like. You can't say drop Paddy Dow and bring in Stocker. It's not a like for like. You need that balance. You need your speed, your toughness, and your decision makers as well. So you need to have the balance in there. And at that stage, I think we might have the right balance. The one I want to talk about, and Newnes as well, I think, playing on a wing as a defensive sort of winger, I thought he was pretty good as well. But the one who I think gave us so much energy, and it was a blessing in disguise to get an opportunity, was Matthew Cottrell. I think coming in for Will Setterfield just showed you what it may look like if we have a winger who's able to run both ways at top speed. A lot of people say Matthew Cottrell's aggression, but I wouldn't say he's aggressive. I just think he plays with so much energy. I think you need your energy players, and I think that's what Luke Parks brought as well. He brings energy, and he will bring energy. And this is what Matthew Cottrell done. I would like to see Matthew Cottrell in time, if he continues to get opportunity, go from a 14-possession player to maybe a 20-possession player on the wing. And I think he's capable of doing that. I think his skills are solid without being brilliant. I think he moves really well. And I think with confidence and more game time, we could see him grow into a pretty, not so much a damaging winger, but a winger who's going to give you a lot defensively as much as he can give you offensively. I think he had young Giro was playing on him in the first quarter, and he had the compliment of having him removed off him just because of his work rate. I think he gave us a lot of energy and a lot of pressure through that midfield, which enabled that to help our back six. So massive tick for Matthew Cottrell, I thought, and it really does sort of show what happens to Will Setterfield next week. Does he come back through the VFL? Does he need a couple of weeks in the VFL? I know when it went out through illness, but I'd be very reluctant to bring Will Setterfield in. I don't think he's a winger. And where does he fit in? Where does he fit in unless there's an injury to one of our inside mids? And at this stage, I can't see it. But that's a working process. That whole midfield, it's still a weakness, it's still a working process, but there were some really positive signs. The biggest one for me was the work rate, of both Lockie Fogarty and Michael Gibbons. I've spoken about, Fogarty's been a great pickup. Let's just go a little bit easy on him. He's had 3 really good games. He's still young, great positive, but let's go easy on him. But I've spoken a lot about Michael Gibbons taking his game to the next level. I think at the start of this season's been really positive, but it was positive last year as well when he fell away. But we need Gibbo. We need him to play a role, but we need him to have an impact. And he's a smart player. He knows how to find the football, and he's got great energy as well. So that is a huge tick from that midfield perspective. Our forwards, like our defence, they benefited from 60-odd inside 50s. Probably could have been better in regard. I know we kicked over 100 points, but we did squander a lot of opportunities. Harry, a lot's been said about Harry. He built for that game. And when you're a key forward and you get the opportunity to play on an undersized defender, an inexperienced defender, you got to beat up on him. That's where you get your confidence up. He was lucky there's no Hamling, there's no Pearce, and there's no Logue. So he gets Brandon Cox, who, let's be honest, is still learning the craft as a defender himself, and he really had no support. And Harry had a day out. He probably should have kicked 10, and if he's going to be a serious key forward in the game, he needed to have a day out on Sunday, and he did just that. Okay, but it was the work rate of their forwards. Forwards are only as good as the midfielders and the halfback flankers, and he really did dine out. But 7 goals, 5, it could have been better for Harry. But it's great to see him up and about. But now the test comes for Harry, because he's not going to kick 7 every week. But huge plus for Harry. My little concern is it all duck or no dinner? We went to Harry, and so we should. But what does that look like? We need to have multiple forwards. If you look at the Western Bulldogs at the moment, they've got Bruce and Norton. At the moment, we've got Harry, and pretty much who's our next option down there? Levi's still out of form. We need to play Levi because we need to be giving Pitnet, who I thought was solid, Pitnet, but I can't wait to see TDK back. I really can't, just because he's got that leap at the centre bounce to see what he can bring. But Pitt was solid against Meek. He had the 16 odd disposals, gave us first use on a couple of occasions, or on a number of occasions, but can't go. The problem is Pitt, he doesn't go forward. Okay, he doesn't really go forward and can be an option down there. And Levi's really struggling at the moment. So yeah, what does that look like moving forward? Thought Jack was really good, Jack Silvani. His ability to work up the ground, half contest, put his body on the line, work and find space was really good. But when you're a forward, you've got to impact the scoreboard. And that's the big test for Jack. I don't think he's kicked more than 3 goals in a game in his career. And to kick 1 goal, 2 or 3 and miss a couple of really easy opportunities is really not good enough. And he needs to understand that because it won't come as easy as that every week. But I thought his performance was solid, but it would have been a lot better if he'd hit the scoreboard and he only kicked the 1 goal. You know, I thought rolling through there, Fogg and Gibbo as those pressure forwards was good. Murph was okay. You know, who's going to take Murph's spot? He continues to do, you know, like he won his 15 or 16 possessions and kicked the goal. Who's going to take Murph's spot? We don't know. Who's putting their hand up? We know what we're going to get from Murph at this stage. Is it good enough to catapult us into finals football? Who knows? I'd probably say not at this stage, but who's going to come through underneath to knock Murph off? That's interesting. And look, great to see Eddie back, and the same with Eddie Betts. Who's going to knock Eddie Betts out of the team with no Fisher there at the moment? I mean, Eddie had 4 touches and kicked a goal, so let's keep it in context. It wasn't a great game by Eddie. He enabled Harry to have some space. He did some blocking, but let's be honest. A small forward having 4 touches and kicking 1 goal. If that was John Smith, who did exactly the same thing, I'd be asking him to go back and play in the VFL. So, are we able to get more from Eddie? We'll just have to wait and see from that point of view. Look, positives, lots of positives, but we beat up on a pretty decimated and young team who are still trying to find their feet. Not getting carried away at all. Looking forward to this week against the Suns. Tell me what you thought in the comments below. I'd be interested to hear your point of view on this win. How are you feeling now? Are you in the same boat of me? You just need to keep a lid on things. Or are you genuinely excited about what the future may hold for 2021? I'll see you later on the week with a big match preview of our game against the Gold Coast Suns at Metricon Stadium on Saturday night. But for now, it's bye.